So we're starting this big brake upgrade. Parts are in the car, but one important thing to keep in mind is the wheel offset on these 2023 GMC Denali rims. Obviously, I have a cap change. It allows a ton of room between the back and the caliper. Don't know that I can turn on the light while I'm recording. Hold on. Overexposed it to show a point, but the amount of space I have, obviously the rim is loose now, but the amount of space I have between the rim and the caliper is massive. So me adding the 4-piston caliper off the 2020s Silverado type package, Trail Boss and Limited, etc., allows that ton of space with the stock rims do not afford you. You'd have to use a spacer, so just something to keep in mind. Anyway, ready to get the last nut off here and start the swap out. Another thing to note is these rotors are butter smooth. There's nothing wrong with the rotors at all. Backside feels the same, but the pads are like shot, like really ridiculously thin. So squealer tabs are going. It's starting to pulsate a little bit. Honestly, amazed these look as good as they do because they feel terrible. So anyway, one nice thing is, I guess with this upgrade, I confirmed you can keep the dust shields on the back. You don't have to swap those out, even though you're getting rid of this entire fixture to do the job. Just to be clear as well, this is a 2011 Escalade, so 3rd gen, same as a 3rd gen Yukon would be in terms of the underside. And then the goal will be just to leave the caliper nut here, the bolts, I mean, in place if I can. I don't 100% sure, but and just remove the bracket bolts, which will soon be caliper bolts. Makes sense if you understand the new 4-piston caliper design does not sit on a bracket. But I'm gonna probably crack the brake line loose first, right here. I don't want to get in my own light's way, and get that off, the banjo bolt off. Get the line out of the way. It's obviously going to leak some fluid. Make sure to maybe put a trap underneath there. You don't get a caustic dot fluid on your garage floor unless you don't care. But that is going to be the first step. This is a 7/16 socket, in case you need to know, for the banjo bolt. And normally I would throw my impact driver back there, but I don't have a socket conversion bit for it. There goes the banjo bolt and the dot fluid. So this is an 18mm socket, which I'm screwing back in slightly, getting it off with this bad boy that I'm blessed enough to have access to. Looking for the other bracket. It's right here, the other bracket bolt. Probably should take the bottom one off first. Pardon the lighting here, but rips it right off. And definitely a blessing to have that, and then be able to get the whole bracket off. Excuse me, get the whole bracket off. Once this is loose, you don't really need to take this part apart because I'm not using it anymore. But that is a 2-hand job I can't do with the camera. Okay, stock 2-piston caliper is off. I'll inspect the pads real quick. They did have a little life left. Let me see here. But I can see why I was starting to hear the squealer tabs, and it might not have been on this side, it might have been on the opposite side. But nonetheless, yeah, pads were shot, or close to. Wagners were on there. I've never changed these pads before. Yeah, it had a good little bit of life left, but definitely in the warning zone, I would say. And this has really made a big mess that I was trying to avoid. And I tipped this upside down before I put it on the ground, but alas, it has done this to me. So yeah, I have a mess to clean up now. But anyway, then you can just get the rotor off. You know, don't need to pull off the caliper from the mounting bracket. So it's kind of a nice convenience. And now I can start with this to get all the new parts on after I clean this up with a wire brush. Quick look at the gear. So went with adaptive 1 rotors. My dad's new truck out there, so killer. Lifetime warranty, fully zinc coated. Even the vents are zinc coated. They're like 29 pounds a piece. It should be quite a bit bigger diameter than this. Quite certain they are. Not gigantic, but sizable. And then I'm gonna put some anti-seize on this after brushing this off, so I'll do that just as a partial example here. I mean, it's honestly in pretty good shape. Mostly just concerned about the part right around the hub. Not so much everything else nice and clean, but you know, does a pretty dang quick job, and I don't even have it in the high speed, so put it in high speed and whew, just rust right off. Yeah, it's almost a two-hand job, but yeah, once that's done, then I'll put the anti-seize on. Okay, that took care of that quite well. Obviously, a little hard to get in between the underneath the bolts with the size of the brush I have, and I don't have a hand brush, but if you want to get real detailed with it, you could get in there with a finger-sized regular brush, but I'm just going to take my anti-seize and liberally coat this to prevent the rotor from ever seizing. And once that's applied, then it's time to get the rotor on, and then make sure to wipe your threads off too if you get some on the threads. Pretty common problem with anti-seize, especially when you're laying it on thick. But yeah, once that's all coated, then I'll get the rotor in place and be able to start on the slight, ever so slight custom process that other folks have shown about putting the washer in place as a spacer to center the caliper brake pads over the new larger rotor. So this is an almost done job, and then we'll get the rotor on. Okay, so anti-seize is coated, got most of it off the threads. Make sure to go around the rim too. Don't miss that part. I went all the way around with the brush. Even coated a little on the inside since the surface rust couldn't really get off, but they are very coated. And the rotor, what it is it in effect has a slightly bigger looking bite area for this, but I could be wrong. So it is the same size as the other rotor. It's just a much nicer one. So I'll get that on. Can't really do that one-handed, so I'll get that on right now. And nothing big to tell here, but make sure you line up if you have that set screw at the bottom that you use it. I actually really need to get the calipers on because it's leaking a lot. Okay, so with the bracket, or what will now be the caliper mounting bolts back on, the only real trick to this setup is these washers being used as spacers. They're 1/2 inch. I measure these with a caliper in hand. Some people say get a 9/16. Don't get a 9/16. They'll float too much. There's no need for it. Plus you risk going too wide of a diameter. And this has a little shelf right here. So if it's too wide, it won't fit on the inside of that little shelf, and then you'll have a whole other issue on your hands. So anyway, with those in place, I can now mount the GM caliper here. By the way, going with some slightly customized yin yang Jordan 1s. Crazy, I put these through the paces for like 8 years now, 9 years. But yeah, I got the 4 piston. Make sure you put the left hand side on the driver's side, and I'm gonna have to spray and clean this rotor off really good once I get this all together. But I'm leaking a lot of dot fluid, more than I care to. I can't get it, the clamp is not stopping it, and the master cylinder is starting to get a little low, which I'm keeping an eye on, but I don't want to add to it just to have it be pissed out of there. So I'm gonna get this thing hooked up, and those spacers right here should align the caliper centered over the rotor, and that's it. Okay, so the only real custom thing about this is getting 1/2 inch washers on here to act as spacers. I put one on to help give a feel for how it helps center the caliper over the rotor, so you have even space on both sides. It goes, at least on my car, on the back. I've seen some where I feel like it was mounted on the front, but that does not make for even spacing on my rig, and this does. So you can see the airspace there, airspace there. So anyway, put that on the back side of the knuckle right here and get that in, and it should be good to go. Okay, so there were some issues I ran into. One is make sure this spacer is on the inside, not the outside. This one has to be reversed. For some reason, when I was tightening them up, it looked like the spacing was better with it on the outside. It turns out, see how big that gap is compared to here? It's too small. Whereas here it doesn't have a lot of space by any means, but does clear. So I feel like my washer is just too thick, and I wish it was a little thinner. I may honestly just take it to a sander and sand it down a little bit so I get the thickness I want. However, the whole thing is cattywampus right now, so I'm gonna get this guy off first before I decide to start sanding them down, because they are zinc plated. It'd be nice to kind of leave that alone from a finished perspective, but see that it's not gonna work. But for this component, I had to undo this bracket to be able to slide the brake line through, and it took, I just unhooked this so it didn't break, and little electric feeder or whatever, and had to undo this bracket in order to get back here so I could soak this with WD-40. And it honestly worked great to be able to just slide this back and forth. That's a very difficult clamp to loosen otherwise, because it's just hard to spread without poking a hole in the brake line. So anyway, should be good now. It really was stretched all the way out to connect it. And yeah, I used a brand new banjo bolt and crush washers. You don't have to. You could leave all the stock stuff in there and it'll be fine. Feel almost foolish having to do it. I had to unthread the copper washer. It wouldn't just slide off, and the banjo bolt does not screw into the brake line. It is fully sliding in and out. There's no threads in this, but the copper washer was preventing that from happening. I was trying, you know, like pry bars and all kinds of stuff, and it just had to be unthreaded by hand, and it worked fine. But anyway, I had to get that connected because I was losing too much stock fluid, and I think I'm good to hook things up depending on the spacing of these washers. Okay, so the issue is there's no set screw in the rotor. If I had this set screw in, then I would have been easily able to tell that the spacing is perfect around the rotor. See the airspace there, airspace there. Everything is right as rain. So we're good with that. Those 1/2-inch zinc washers you see right here. Once the rotor is held in place, you're good. So I'm going to get the Akabono pads on, which I got from Napa along with the rotors. At the same time, they had 20% off, so I just went for the best stuff they had, basically, and hopefully it'll last the longest. Also, make sure to, if you like, you don't have to do this step, but lubricate the backside of the pads that go against the pistons. Since the whole thing doesn't touch, but this part does, I just do it that way with your favorite brake grease. And then once these go in, handling carefully. So nice, this system, to be able to slide them in. Hey, go too far. So I gotta pull that one back out, but you can see the point of it. And then just lube up your pin. I'm kind of using that to hold it in place. I'll have to kind of spin it. Lube all around. Basically any part where it's gonna touch the caliper. Just make sure you got enough on there. Trying to kind of keep it off the rotor, which isn't the easiest thing in this predicament, but can be done carefully. Nobody's paying me to move too fast, so let's see and go ahead and get that through. And there we go. Now it's cotter pin ready, quite well lubed, so we're good there. Great fit there. Obviously, do not forget your spring spider spring, whatever. And get the cotter pin in before I lose them on the back. Cotter spring pin. There we go. Put that little guy in there. And do the same for the other side, and you're good to go. All right, I'm in a different garage tonight. I mentioned in the video earlier that I was missing that. It's technically called a rotor retaining bolt, even though it's technically a metric screw. It's not technically a bolt, but the stock one is zinc and like a number 25 or 30 Torx head. This is a stainless steel alternative. It was $3.75 on the date of this video at the Home Depot. The size, pulled straight off of, you know, like a GM parts list, is M8 times 1 1/4 or 1.25 times 20. It has to be that exact size, M8, 125, and 20 to be the right length depth. And it has to be a countersunk head in order to obviously fit the countersunk rotor. It is, I think, more important to have this with this way that the rotor kind of otherwise floats in here, to make sure you have even pad wear. In the past, I've next to never had security bolts in my rotors. However, I think this is a wise move with keeping the pads in the longest life. Yes, when the wheel's pressed against it, in theory, this has no room to move any, but if the little bits of vibration and this and that could be help to be prevented by that bolt, I just figure definitely safer to have it for under $4 than to not. I believe a dealership charges 10 to 12 bucks for that part plus tax if you're living in a tax state. So definitely a cheaper alternative. You obviously go with a Phillips. It is a really large Phillips. I had a screwdriver. It was just barely big enough to fit that. It was my biggest one, but nonetheless, everything else is back on there. The pads were broken in last night, even though I took this back off, not just to do that, but I also forgot to put this back together, so that was good to get that bolt back in there. I'm glad I put the bolt in place, so at least I didn't lose it. And to bleed the brakes, which I tried to use a pump, but ended up going the old pump at the brake pedal method with my better half, because my pump broke. The seals internally busted on the gun. So sticking old school style and just getting the air out of the lines. Otherwise, they are dialed. This side is 100% dialed now, ready to go. So just as a quick reference, this is the stock zinc coated screw, which of course gets some rust on it with time and has a Torx head. It also countersinks really deep into the rotor for some reason, at least this rotor. But honestly, I don't really feel like changing it out to have a match. So let's have a backup stainless steel since I bought two. But just bled the brakes on this. I use the old pump method and they are squared away.